Welcome to the Civil Rights Obligations for English Learner Students Part 1 training video presented by the Kentucky Department of Education's Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, Division of School and Program Improvement. Participants in this training video will leave with an understanding of some of the civil rights obligations for serving English learner or EL students. There are 10 civil rights obligations total. This video will cover the first 5. The last 5 will be covered in Part 2 of our Civil Rights Obligations for English Learner Students video. The 5 obligations discussed in this video are identifying and assessing all potential EL students, providing EL students with a language assistance program, staffing and supporting an EL program, providing meaningful access to all curricular and extracurricular programs, and avoiding unnecessary segregation of EL students. All districts and schools have an obligation to provide appropriate services under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Educational Opportunities Act, or EEOA, of 1974. These services constitute the district's core EL program. It's important to note that civil rights and EEOA required EL services cannot be paid for with federal funds. The January 2015 Dear Colleague letter issued jointly by the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Justice is a great resource regarding these obligations. Identifying and assessing potential ELs. The Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, Section 3113B2, requires that states establish standardized statewide entrance and exit procedures for ELs. These procedures must be applied consistently across the state. 703 KAR 570 requires all Kentucky districts administer a home language survey, or HLS, to all students enrolled in the district as a first screening process to identify potential EL students. The HLS should be completed upon initial enrollment only, not every year. ESSA Section 1112E3D prohibits basing any part of the EL identification process on the basis of a surname or language minority status. Kentucky's home language survey is based at a minimum on the following 4 questions. What is the language most frequently spoken at home? Which language did your child learn when he or she first began to talk? What language does your child most frequently speak at home? And what language do you most frequently speak to your child? Do reassure parents that the HLS is used solely to offer appropriate educational services, not for determining legal status or for immigration purposes. Don't include questions which have a chilling effect and thereby discourage enrollment and/or attendance. Questions like this could include asking for a social security number without explaining the purpose of requesting it, or the date that the child first entered the U.S. It's recommended that the home language survey be a separate form or separate section if the district is utilizing an online enrollment form, rather than adding it to the basic enrollment form. Districts may include additional questions at their discretion, provided the questions do not have a chilling effect. Many districts choose to include a question to ascertain the language in which parents wish to receive communication from the school or district. A note on asking for the Social Security number. As stated, parents are not required to provide this information. KRS 156-160 created SSIDs as a means of student identification because some students do not have Social Security numbers, and some parents don't want to provide that information to the district. KDE created a home language survey template featuring clarifying language to help parents understand the purpose of the HLS and decrease instances of misidentification. Districts are not required to use this template, but are encouraged to review the language, consider incorporating it into their own HLS. Districts may also adopt this template as is to serve as their HLS. Schools must train staff on how to prevent a chilling effect. It's all in how you ask the question. Here are some examples of how questions can be reworded to remove the chilling effect and still obtain the necessary information. Instead of asking, "Is your child a U.S. citizen?" ask, "What is the child's place of birth?" Please also note that this is an optional question. Parents are not required to provide this information. Instead of asking, "Was your child born in the U.S.?" ask, "What is their date of entry into a U.S. school?" Instead of asking for the date of entry into the U.S., ask, "Has your child been enrolled in a school outside the U.S.?" It's important to note that date of entry into the U.S. is a field in Infinite Campus, but it is not a required field. There's some additional information that is required of parents or guardians when enrolling their students. We're going to review some of that right now. First is the proof of residency in the school district. This is required information. However, the district cannot require parents provide their state-issued identification or driver's license. Acceptable forms for proof of residency include phone and water bills, lease agreements, affidavits, etc. Although state-issued identification or driver's licenses may be provided to establish residency, again, they cannot be required. Next is the proof of age. The district cannot require a student's birth certificate, although birth certificates may be provided to establish age. Other forms of proof of age include religious, hospital, or physician certificates showing the date of birth, an entry in a family Bible, an adoption record, an affidavit from the parent, or previously verified school records. The final piece of required information is the proof of immunization, and this must be provided within 2 weeks of the child's attendance. Next is voluntary information. Social Security numbers are voluntary information. It's important that on the form, the district explains the purpose for which that number will be used. Race or ethnicity data is also voluntary. Kentucky's EL identification process begins with administering the HLS to all students upon their initial enrollment in the district. Next, the district will review the HLS responses. If any answers are a language other than English, the student is a potential EL and must be screened using the appropriate WIDA screener. Kindergartners will take the kindergarten WAPT. A kindergarten student who has taken the WAPT must be enrolled as an EL student regardless of the score results. The student may not exit EL status until receiving at least a 4.5 overall composite on the Access for ELLs test in the first grade. Students in grades 1 through 12 will take the WIDA screener online. Students scoring a 4.5 overall composite or above are identified as initially fully English proficient or IFEP and are not enrolled as ELs. Students scoring below a 4.5 overall composite are enrolled as ELs. These students will take the Access for ELLs each January and will remain active ELs until scoring at least a 4.5 overall composite on the Access test. Finally, a Program Service Plan, or PSP, is created for each student enrolled as an EL. Some additional information on the WIDA screener assessments. The kindergarten WAPT is a paper and pencil test given to incoming kindergartners to identify ELs. It's about 30 minutes total test time, and it does not assign scores across the full range of WIDA English proficiency levels 1 through 6. The WIDA screener is an English language proficiency or ELP test given to students in grades 1 through 12 to identify ELs. It's approximately 80 to 85 minutes total test time, and it's available in 2 formats, online and paper. However, online is the more commonly used format. The WIDA screener reports proficiency level scores in each language domain, as well as 3 composite scores: oral language, literacy, and overall score. So we have a few scenarios in which we need to determine which of these students could be identified as ELs. Scenario 1, a foreign exchange student who has been deemed English proficient by the foreign exchange program in their home country. Scenario 2, a deaf or hearing impaired student who communicates through American Sign Language. Scenario 3, a student adopted from a non-English speaking country, now living in a home where only English is spoken. And scenario 4, a student whose HLS lists only English, however, the school knows that another language is spoken in the home. Scenario 1, a foreign exchange student who has been deemed English proficient by the foreign exchange program in their home country could be identified as an EL. Remember that the HLS is completed for all students, including foreign exchange students, and answers other than English will result in this student needing to be screened for English language proficiency. Although the student has been declared English proficient in their home country, they may not meet the standardized statewide ELP standards for Kentucky. Unless the home country uses the WIDA access for ELLs to determine ELP, the student must be assessed using our criteria. This was verified through a December 2010 guidance document from USED and reiterated by USED at a 2019 CCSSO meeting. Scenario 2, a deaf or hearing impaired student who communicates through American Sign Language could not be identified as an EL unless they meet the ESSA definition of an EL and their primary language is one based on national origin. According to the July 2015 Title III Director Letter from USED, an individual cannot be considered an EL solely because of their reliance on ASL for communication due to deafness or hearing impairment. Individuals whose native language is based on national origin and who also have a hearing impairment and rely on ASL for communication could be considered an EL because their native language is a language other than English. Scenario 3, a student adopted from a non-English speaking country now living in a home where only English is spoken could be identified as an EL. The English language proficiency of students and parents are independent from one another. English proficient parents may have a non-English proficient child and vice versa. Scenarios such as this emphasize the importance of the HLS question, what language did your child learn when he or she first began to talk? In scenario 4, a student whose HLS lists only English, but the school knows another language is spoken in the home could not be identified as an EL. Based on Kentucky's identification process, a student whose HLS lists only English would not be flagged as a potential EL, and there would be no justification for assessing their English language proficiency. The HLS is more likely to be completed accurately when the district eliminates questions with a chilling effect from the survey, clearly explains the purpose of the survey, and provides the survey in a language parents can understand through a translated document and/or a qualified interpreter. Assessment accommodations. Students receiving EL services must have a program service plan or PSP in place. 703 KAR 570 guidance requires the following documentation be kept for students needing assessment accommodations as determined by the PSP committee. The name and date of the English language proficiency or ELP assessment administered to determine a student's EL status. A PSP that includes the specific accommodations to be implemented in instruction. A list of the names of the PSP committee members who reviewed the documentation and made the decisions. The list of staff should be placed with the Title III records. The appropriate accommodations needed, and the signature of the principal of the appropriate school as an indication of approval for the described accommodations. KDE has a PSP template available in the district guide for the English Learner program on our website. However, districts are not required to use that template. Districts may also see page 17 of the 703 KAR 570 guidance for a list of documentation in the PSP. Districts must also maintain a folder for each EL student containing information related to the student's status as an EL and details about their individual PSP. Some districts create checklists to ensure all required materials are included in the folder each year. Some add stickers to the front of the folders with basic information such as SSID, home language, date enrolled in the EL program, etc. Those are not required. They're just some things that some of our districts are doing to help keep things organized. The student folder contents should contain a copy of the original home language survey, the initial ELP assessment score sheet, a copy of the parent notification letter containing the required information in ESSA section 1112 E3A, the student's level of academic achievement, their annual ELP assessment score sheet, and a copy of their PSP. Removal of EL designation. As a general rule, after a student is identified as an EL, the district may not remove the EL designation before that student meets the statewide exit criteria, even if the student's parents object to the EL designation. Parents may decline EL services, but not the annual ELP assessment. There are very rare exceptions when a student has been erroneously identified as an EL. Please contact KDE in this situation prior to removing a student's EL designation. Assessing English learners. ESSA section 1111B2G requires districts to assess the English language proficiency of all ELs on an annual basis using an assessment aligned with the state's ELP standards. The assessment measures students' academic English language in the 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Our English language proficiency assessment in Kentucky is the Access test. There's the kindergarten access for ELLs, which is a paper-based test individually administered to kindergarten students in a game-like interactive format. The access for ELLs online, which is a computer-based adaptive test that responds to student performance and may be administered in group or individual settings. The access for ELLs paper. This is a paper-based test that allows teachers to place students into tiers based on their language proficiency. And the alternate access for ELLs. This is a large print paper-based test individually administered to students in grades 1 through 12, identified as ELs with significant cognitive disabilities. Access for ELLs, or simply Access, is the collective name for WIDA's suite of summative English language proficiency assessments. The content of the assessments align with the WIDA English language development standards. If we look at the number of ELs tested in Kentucky over the past few years, we can see that it has been steadily increasing by at least 5% each year. In fact, 2018, 2019, and 2020 all saw over 10% increases in the number of students tested. Questions about assessments for English learners can be directed to KDE's Office of Standards Assessment and Accountability. Their number is 502-564-4394. You can also access email contact information on the Access for ELLs webpage. Providing a language assistance program. Civil rights laws do not require any particular method of instruction or program. Districts and schools must consider each EL student's English proficiency level, grade level, background, etc. when designing a program. Students in EL programs must receive appropriate language assistance services until they're proficient in English and can participate meaningfully in the district's educational programs without language assistance services. Services and programs must be educationally sound in theory and effective in practice based on the Castaneda standards. As a reminder, Castaneda v. Pickard court case is covered in the Introduction to Serving English Learner and Immigrant Students video. The Castaneda standards set the criteria for evaluating the adequacy of a district's EL program. The standards include qualified teachers implementing sound theory. This includes the training of staff, soundness of education approach, including effective teaching methods and resources and personnel, and that school districts must evaluate their programs and make adjustments where needed to ensure language barriers are actually being overcome. The program and services provided to the student will be outlined in the Program Service Plan, or PSP. Chapter 2 of the English Learner Toolkit contains a checklist for providing a language assistance program. Some guiding questions when determining if your language assistance program is sufficient. On which educational theory are the EL services and program options based? What are the resources needed to effectively implement the chosen program? How are placement in a particular EL program and the provision of services informed by a student's English proficiency level, grade level, educational and language backgrounds? Are EL services and programs provided to all eligible ELs regardless of scheduling conflicts, grades, disability, or native language? Does the chosen EL program include instruction aligned to the state English language proficiency standards and grade level content standards? Are EL services and programs designed to provide more intensive instruction for ELs who are the least proficient in English? Are ELs at the highest level of ELP continuing to receive EL services until they have exited from EL services and programs? Staffing and supporting an EL program. Districts have an obligation to provide the personnel and resources necessary to effectively implement their chosen EL programs. This includes an adequate number of highly qualified EL teachers to provide language assistance services, staff trained to support the EL program, trained administrators who can evaluate the EL program teachers, adequate appropriate instructional materials at appropriate English proficiency and grade levels, and appropriate bilingual materials. Chapter 3 of the English Learner Toolkit contains a checklist for staffing and supporting an EL program. Some of the guiding questions found there include, do all EL program, core content, and special education teachers who instruct ELs have the appropriate certification, licensure, or training to teach ELs? If not, are they working to obtain it within a reasonable period of time? Do all teachers who instruct ELs demonstrate the skills necessary to effectively implement the district's EL program? Does the district provide supplemental professional learning opportunities when necessary to ensure that the EL program is implemented effectively? Do all EL program, core content, and special education teachers who deliver instruction to ELs with disabilities receive professional development, or PD, specifically related to teaching dually identified ELs? This is also from Chapter 3 of the English Learner Toolkit regarding the adequate number of qualified staff. Are the district's EL services adequately staffed with qualified ESL, bilingual, core content, and special education teachers trained in EL strategies in order to meet EL's language and content needs? Are principals or other administrative staff tasked with evaluating EL teachers certified and sufficiently trained in EL strategies in order to meaningfully evaluate teachers who deliver instruction to ELs? Are paraprofessionals adequately trained to support ELs, and are they working under the direct supervision of a certified teacher? Also from Chapter 3 of the English Learner Toolkit, adequate resources for the EL program. Does the district provide sufficient and appropriate materials for EL students at all levels of English language proficiency, including all grade levels and for each EL program? Do the resources provide challenging academic content aligned with grade level state content standards? A few staffing and support do's and don'ts. Do offer language assistance services based on student need rather than staffing levels and teacher availability. Do provide adequate training to general education teachers who provide core content instruction to EL students. It's important to remember that EL students are spending the majority of their time with their general education teachers. Don't utilize mainstream teachers, paraeducators, or tutors rather than fully qualified ESL teachers for ESL instruction. Don't use a software program to provide EL services in lieu of a qualified ESL teacher. Please note that many districts do use software programs as one of the facets of their core program. This cannot be the sole basis of the program. Providing meaningful access to all programs. EL students must be provided equal opportunities to meaningfully participate in all programs and activities. This includes curricular, which talks about the core curriculum activities. Co-curricular, this could be something like advanced placement, international baccalaureate, honors programs, gifted and talented education, etc., and extracurricular activities such as athletics, teams, and clubs. Chapter 4 of the English Learner Toolkit provides this meaningful access checklist. Do the EL programs provide access to the same standard grade level curriculum or to a comparable curriculum equally rigorous as is offered to never ELs, while also providing appropriate language assistance strategies in core instruction? Are ELs integrated into the school's educational programs, extracurricular offerings, additional services, and student body? Do ELs have equal access to all of the school's facilities? Do policies and processes enable ELs to access advanced classes, gifted and talented education programs for which ELP is not necessary for meaningful participation? And do policies and processes ensure that advanced classes, gifted and talented education programs, and EL services are not scheduled at the same time? Avoiding unnecessary segregation. EL programs may not unjustifiably segregate students on the basis of national origin or EL status. Programs which require EL students receive separate instruction for a period of time should be carried out in the least segregative manner consistent with achieving the program's goals. Chapter 5 of the English Learner Toolkit contains an Avoiding Unnecessary Segregation checklist. What steps have been taken to develop positive and inclusive school climates for ELs? What are the stated goals of the EL program? Is the degree of segregation necessary to achieve those goals? Does the degree of segregation decrease commensurate with the EL's rising English language proficiency levels, as well as their time and progress in the EL program? And do EL students participate with their non-EL peers during the following: grade level curriculum, extracurricular activities, after-school activities, and other subjects such as art, music, and physical education? We have a few examples of some unnecessary segregation compliance issues. These are located in the Dear Colleague letter. Failure to give segregated EL students access to grade level curriculum, special education, or extracurricular activities. Segregation of EL students for both academic and non-academic subjects. Maintaining students in language assistance programs longer than necessary to achieve the program goals. And placement of EL students in newcomer programs due to perceived behavior problems or special needs. Any questions about the English Learner or Title III programs can be directed to KDE's Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, Division of School and Program Improvement, English Learners Migrant and Neglected Students Branch. The phone number is 502-564-3791, and the English Learners Contact Guide contains program consultant email addresses as well. A number of resources were consulted when recording this video. The resources have been divided into a few sections: basic information, legal obligations and guidance, communicating with LEP parents, immigrant students, and assessment. Some of these resources were not included in this video. They'll be included in the Part 2 Civil Rights Obligations video. Thank you.